Our Dennis Dodd reporting that the Big Ten is considering expanding to 20 teams. USC and UCLA will make it 16 in a couple of years. Dennis reporting that Cal, Stanford, Oregon, and Washington could take the conference to 20. Here's what Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren said about realignment at Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis.
What's next? It may include future expansion, but it will be done for the right reasons, at the right time, with our student athletes, academic and athletic empowerment at the center of any and all decisions that we will make regarding any further expansions. We will not expand just to expand. It will be strategic. It will add additional value to our conference.
All right, let's go out to Indianapolis. Brady Quinn is there for Big Ten Media Days. Brady, when listening to Commissioner Warren there, he says it's going to be strategic. It's not going to be just to add teams. To me, as a Big Ten fan all my life, adding Cal and Stanford, Washington, Oregon, to me that seems like you're just adding to add. Like, what would that really add for the Big Ten?
Honestly, nothing. And for those teams that are currently in the Big Ten, you'd have to think that it'd only be a drain on the current revenue that you're receiving from the Big Ten. I mean, people keep talking about expansion like the more the merrier. The reality is, if you add more teams, that cuts up that pie even more and you get a smaller piece. And so I don't think in a world where I think right now most universities are more focused on themselves and their own well-being, that they really want to invite more teams to join in unless they're truly going to bring value. It's no different than the SEC, which recently voted not to add additional teams from the ACC. So why would you want to bring more players or more teams to the party that's going to take away from your revenue share? So I know there's reports out there. Those to me are unsubstantiated. There could be expansion in the future, but I don't see it happening right now. I think the biggest domino that's going to fall will be Notre Dame, and if and when they decide to join the Big Ten or any other conference for that matter.
Yeah, we know that you played at Notre Dame. You're one of the all-time greats. You're still locked in there. You're still talking to people. You can't share everything you know, but where is Notre Dame right now in deciding what's best for its future?
Yeah, I think they're just sitting back, watching and observing, really how this landscape is changing. And it could be they're looking at, for example, the Big Ten media rights deal. What networks are a part of it, who aren't. That'll then give them a clearer picture as to, if they can remain independent potentially and make enough off of that agreement for their home games, or if they feel like the gap between their independence and that TV deal is too large as compared to them joining a conference. And so those are all the things right now that are on the table. But I don't think they're in any rush to make that decision at this point. I think they want to see what happens with the Big Ten media rights first, and then they'll start, looking at the landscape and see where it fits best for them, not only from a revenue standpoint, but from scheduling and everything else that goes along with that decision, especially the other sports that are right now the majority affiliated with the ACC, with the exception of the hockey program, which is in the Big Ten.
And that's down the road, of course. Let's talk here and now in the Big Ten this season, and Michigan, the defending Big Ten champs. We know Ohio State is the overwhelming favorite this season. They always are. But what kind of position is Jim Harbaugh in to try to stay atop this conference after his breakout season last year?
Well, the position is he's going to find out what sort of foundation he's built there at Michigan. Because this is that opportunity where the style of football, the brand that you created last year, running the football, good, sound, solid defense was the Achilles heel of Ohio State. And it was able to win the Big Ten. But can you replicate that, losing people like David Ojabo, like Aiden Hutchinson, who was a Heisman finalist, Daxton Hill, and all these other great players? They don't have that on defense now, so they have to recreate that. On offense, you've got Cade McNamara and J.J. McCarthy probably battling it out. I'll be curious to see how that plays out. And Ronnie Bell is returning after missing pretty much the entire season besides a game due to injury, along with Eric All, who may be the best tight end, and a star-studded backfield with Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum. But the question really becomes, what's the coaching staff going to look like now? A lot of turnover. Jesse Minter now takes over as the defensive coordinator with Mike McDonald going back to the Baltimore Ravens to call their defense. And he's splitting up offensive play calling duties between Moore and Weiss, which I'm sure Jim Harbaugh will have a hand on until they feel more comfortable with where they're at. But that's the difficulty right now, I think, for Michigan is you've got a loaded Ohio State team that I think has made it probably, I don't want to say bulletin board material, but they always circle that game, but it's probably going to mean a little something extra given the fact that Ohio State had won the Big Ten championship the last 4 years until this past season. So I think they want to get back on top of the Big Ten.
Ohio State, heavy favorite in the Big Ten. C.J. Stroud, the favorite preseason to win the Heisman Trophy. Are they going to face many challenges in the Big Ten?
Potentially, because if you go back and look at last year, what their Achilles heel was stopping the run. We saw that early in the season versus Oregon. And so they're going to be tested, I'm sure, week 1 versus Notre Dame, who can run the football. Clearly, September 24th versus Wisconsin. You know Michigan State, who loses Kenneth Walker, but they do pick up in the transfer portal Jalen Berger, who was a former Wisconsin running back, a 4-star recruit, and then Jarek Broussard out of Colorado, who was really productive there. They got Iowa after that. And then obviously Michigan to finish the season. All those teams really hammer away running the football. So Jim Knowles, their new defensive coordinator, he's going to have his hands full. And he runs a very different scheme from his former job at Oklahoma State, running a 3-3-5 as far as the personnel you have at Ohio State. They are a 4-2-5 defense when they're in nickel and 4-3 if they're in base. Drastically different than what he was accustomed to calling defenses in the Big 12. So how does he pair up with their personnel? And how does he implement that scheme to stop some of these rushing attacks, which Ohio State's going to have to go through 5 or 6 of those tough games this year?
Ohio State, the favorites. Then it's a pretty big drop to Michigan. Then it's a pretty big drop to everybody else. We asked you for a couple of dark horses. Wisconsin is one of them. They're favorites in the West. But you also think that the Iowa Hawkeyes are a dark horse. Why do you think that's a possibility with the offensive challenges that they've had of late and Spencer Petras coming back as the likely starter again at quarterback?
Well, I think that starts there. You've got a veteran player, a seasoned player coming back at quarterback. That helps you a little bit. And I know in the losses, obviously, he played poorly last season, but in the wins, like he showcased what he's capable of doing. Now, look, they lost Charlie Jones in the transfer portal. They're going to have to replicate that. But Keegan Johnson, Arlen Bruce, those guys stepped up last year and showed some of their ability. And Sam Laporta may be the best tight end in the Big Ten. So, they've got enough pieces, I think, and they're going to be able to run the football with the dominant offensive line they play. And defensively, you've got a ball hawk like Riley Moss coming back. Jake Campbell will be one of the best linebackers in college football. So they're going to be an experienced team that's going to come back and play their brand of football. And if they can replicate a portion of what we saw last year, really to begin the season, I think you're going to see a team that is going to be in contention for the West, right alongside with Wisconsin. If they can get any passing game going to match what Braylon Allen showcased last year as a freshman running back.
All right, that's Brady Quinn. Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis, looking ahead at the Big Ten season, which runs through Columbus, more than likely. Once again, Michigan won it last season, but the Wolverines have to go to Columbus this season. Ohio State, heavy favorites to win the Big Ten. Then it's Michigan. Then there's a drop down to Wisconsin, Penn State, and Nebraska with better odds than Iowa, which is surprising. 16-1, Iowa's 22-1. Nebraska's picked 5th in the West. Iowa's picked 2nd. You just heard Brady say Iowa, one of the dark horses. The Cornhuskers, I don't think they've made a bowl game since the Tommy Frazier era.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.